I've always loved interacting with the fans and reading their tweets of support. And this one I particularly like from Blair Tink. Great bet, the Lions win the division. Bank it.
Oh, really?
Whoa.
Blair, is that Dan Campbell's phantom Twitter account or what?
The Lions win the division this year. Bank it.
Listen, the division is weak. The Bears are still a terrible team. Packers, admittedly, I think take a step back. I think they're kind of
Packers
reloading.
are going to be garbage. You know that.
They very well
Bears
could be.
are the Bears.
Yep, they could be. But the Vikings, what did they win? 12 games last year?
Oh, really? Now
Kirk
you're
Cousins.
a fan of Kirky Cousins.
Well, he makes the playoffs. I mean, the Lions don't make the playoffs. The Lions, were they 8-9 last year? I got Lions fans coming at me now, too. I could care. Dude, if you're a Lions fan, you
know
got to
who's going to
relax.
come after you? James Taddy.
Yeah, Taddy's. I saw him yesterday walking around in a Lions, old school kind of throwback.
You didn't.
Yeah, he had a windbreaker on from the early 80s that was vintage. It actually was a great look. He is a big Lions fan.
Great.
John tweeting in saying, Hayes, his comments on the Lions are disgusting. What a classless, uninformed statement.
Was I tagged?
No, that was at the OverDrive account. Okay, just relax, all right? All I said was, and I'll follow through on this, and I'll continue to hammer it until opening night, albeit hypocritically, because I will be watching intently, and I can't wait for opening night of the NFL season.
Me neither. Grappler, throw out a poll. Lions make the playoffs or miss.
But that's not what we were talking about. We weren't talking about if they make the playoffs.
I just want to see what the general public, if the Lions make the playoffs, if they think that.
Sure.
I want to know what the people think.
But that's not about opening night. Opening night should be Rodgers versus Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers making his debut.
Rodgers is going up to Buffalo to play Josh Allen. Are you happy with that?
Awesome
Great.
game. Awesome game.
Okay, so in that first game with the Lions, who's the star power? Where's the marquee names? Where is it? Who's
Jerry Goff? It's Jerry Goff. They've got a great defense. Aiden Hutchinson in his second year. They've got a good backfield.
So you don't only want Mahomes and Kelsey and the whole gang and Andy Reid with his Hawaiian shirt on the sidelines. You want something else.
I'm just saying, opening night is that's a big night. That's for a team that's consistently great, consistently in the playoffs, and that's not the Lions. That's not the Lions. Sorry, John. You can call it disgusting and classless, but it's just a straight fact. And I understand the Packers, they didn't make the playoffs last year either. I'm not saying Green Bay should be playing opening night, although I'd find that more compelling. Jordan Love making his first start, definitely more compelling. But it's over. That's what's happening. Lions at Arrowhead opening night. And the fact that Kansas City's playing, it's the NFL. That's my point. It's the NFL's trolling. They're we put any team in there, opening night, Thursday night, the ratings are going to be a bonanza. Yeah. Exactly. There's going to be so many people so jacked up for the NFL's return. And the rest of the schedule is starting to leak out. It looks like Rodgers and the Jets do have a tough start to the year. They got the Bills. I think they play New England early, so Belichick. I saw it earlier. It's a tough schedule to start. But I think they actually play Kansas City week 4. I think they might be at Arrowhead playing Mahomes and the Chiefs. So it'll be a tough September for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. We'll see if Luke Wilson wants to join us later. All right? The Grappler's going to reach out. We'll see if my boy Luke wants to step in and maybe wants to talk about his Leafs too, right? Big Leaf fan. Luke Wilson growing up down in the Windsor area. And at least with a big win, an impressive win, I think a necessary win for them to at least show that they weren't just going to roll over last night. And, of course, that should be a prerequisite that you're going to show up and want to win, try to win, perform as if you have to win. But it's not always the way sports works. There are times where teams get down 3-0 and they just say, that's it. We're done. It's over. We're going to get pumped anyway. We can't come back. And the Leafs, I think, showed a lot of wherewithal last night, especially in the fashion they played. They blocked a ton of shots. It was a veteran type of road win last night. You take the series record out of it, impressive road win. Blocking shots. They wanted the face-off dot. They were physical. They turned the puck over. I thought that was a really, really impressive blueprint. Question is, can he do it two or three more times?
Comes
we'll
down
find
to
out
one
starting
word,
tomorrow
Hazy.
night.
One word envelops everything. Competition.
Compete.
That's it. All the other things fall in line when you just start with that. You got a chance when you do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Joseph Woll story has the chance to be a really cool story. It's still very early. It's in its infancy. But it becomes a bigger story, I think, for tomorrow's game than it even did prior to last night. We discussed that yesterday, that it was more about the big picture stuff. Core 4, what they did in Game 3, what's going to happen with the future of Keefe and Dubas. It's like Joseph Woll actually starting the game had been buried a little bit. Now it's like, okay, you're 3-1, you're coming home. What's this kid all about on home ice? And we've seen him play in Toronto, obviously, and he's been a part of their program for years. But he looks cool, calm, and collected. I liked his post game, really even keeled, and it's a big moment for him to try to continue tomorrow night. And I got to give credit where credit's due. That's always been our philosophy on this show. The least any team wins and plays well, we'll be the first to praise them. Right? If they play poorly, they roll over, and you lose badly, we'll be the first to jump on and criticize. And that's what's happened recently. But last night, all you can do is take it one game at a time. I thought the Leafs, they had a really impressive effort last night. Really impressive. And it's a good win. It's a good win, and now they roll it over to tomorrow night. And, we'll see. I can't imagine that any lineup changes or anything along those lines, but we'll see what Craig Button has to say about that. Here he is from TSN, our good buddy Craig Button, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. How would you describe that win by the Leafs last night?
Yeah, well, here's my problem, okay? All I've been doing is stealing O's lines from last night. Compete, grind, and everything. So, now I'm just going to sound like I'm repeating everything he said. But, it's as simple as that. They grinded that win out. They grinded it right out. They grinded it, and they grinded it out everywhere. They grinded it out defensively. They grinded it out. That second goal that they scored, they grinded it out in the offensive zone. They wore him down. I mean, Bobrovsky loses his stick. Maybe it factored in. He didn't have a good grip on it. Who knows? But they worked that puck in the offensive zone exactly how you wanted to do it. And they wore him down. And, there was no flip passes into the middle of the ice. There was no hope plays. There was no hanging onto the puck too long. Even strength. The Florida Panthers had 2 slot shots on goal. 2 in the entire game. If that isn't grinding it out, I don't know what is. Yep. And, I think the other thing, guys, that one of the things, when you're an AC, you come into the playoffs, they're like, oh, they're an AC seed. And, you got in there, you're the last team in. But then when you win a series in the first round, you've won 4 games. And to win 4 games in the first round is pretty significant. And then when you beat the best team in the league, I think it adds a little bit more to it. And you stop being an ace seed when you get to the second round. You now got your game in order. I think that the Leafs in last night's game finally realized who they were playing against. They weren't playing against an ace seed. They were playing against a team that was comfortable in low-scoring games and grinding it out. And the Leafs outgrinded them.
Craig, it's great and it's positive, and I think they're going to have a great chance to win the hockey game tomorrow. But you have to ask the question, why would it take a group that's been through so much kind of lack of success and adversity come playoff time with the ability to get it done? Why would it take so long to figure that out?
I have a couple answers to that, Jeff. And my first answer is, and I just answered, I don't think they knew who they were playing. I think that winning the first round was as much about relief as it was about excitement. 6 years, not getting past the first round, opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to clinch. Yeah, they were excited after Game 6 when they beat Tampa Bay. I think it was relief. I don't think it was just and then I think they let down. I think they let down. I think that they didn't know who they were playing against. They didn't see the opposition as worthy. And yeah, that happens. And before you and even when I'm listening, oh yeah, we had our looks. Even after Game 3, I mean, those players are talking about we had our looks. Go watch the game again, gentlemen. You didn't have your looks. You were terrible. But they fell into a spot where they didn't recognize, number one, what they needed to do, and number two, what the opposition was doing that was getting to a 3-0 lead. So you get your backs against the wall. But the other thing I'll say, too, I think that's only their second complete game out of 10 in the playoffs. Only their second of 10. And that 2 games out of 10 in the playoffs, not going to cut it. And, that was a complete effort. That was a complete game last night for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But
Craig,
you got to get 2 in a row now.
Agreed, 100%. And you brought up a point where some of the comments they were saying, we've talked about it at length yesterday. We weren't sure what team was going to show up last night because of kind of the a guy like Mitch Marner saying, we don't care about what you guys have to say. Austin Matthews was saying that, and, it was almost like there was lip service. Now, I don't know if it was the break in between the games that it was a little bit too much, whether you had to sit and stew in it. But did you expect the Leafs to show up? Like, what were you expecting before that game yesterday? Because honestly, for me, I wasn't sure what team I was going to get. But I was happy to see the team that showed up last night competed and, like you say, really, really wore down and chipped away and played a full 60 minutes.
Jamie, I was the same way. I wasn't sure. And after Game 3, when you're watching that, you're going, really? That's the effort? That's the determination you're going to play with? And so, when you say, oh, we expect them to have their best game. Yeah, we expect them, but they'd left you, and it would be one thing too if they had all these great playoff games over the course of this playoff season, and said, okay, that was a one-off, but it wasn't a one-off. It had happened too many times, and they'd played 30 minutes, and they'd played 35 minutes, and they'd had great periods, but they had these stretches where they were wobbling, and so now you're going in, but I think that, and whatever Mitch or whatever Austin says. I mean, they shouldn't care what the media thinks. They should not care one bit. But what they should do is stand in front of the mirror and take a good, long, hard look at themselves and say, can I be better? And what can I do to be better? That's all they just owe it to themselves and their teammates. They don't owe it to anybody else. And so while I expect top players and I expect a team that had 112 points to come out and play hard with your backs against the wall, I wasn't sure. But like you, I think that, there was an expectation that you were going to see a great effort. And if there wasn't an effort, if they lost last night, it would have been bitter. It would have been disappointing. But with that type of an effort, I think you would have said, okay, they gave everything they got, and then you can do the forensic analysis. But if they go out without a whimper, I think that would become a greater indictment on themselves individually. And they didn't open that door. And I think that they showed themselves more than they showed anybody else what they're capable of.
Everyone's got a different take on the pressure question, Craig. Like, when does it flip from being on the Leafs to being on Florida? Is it already on Florida? Where do you stand on that? Who has the most pressure right now? And if the Leafs win tomorrow night, where does the pressure go from there?
Well, here's what I feel. I feel that one step was Game 4. So you have to win it. So before you can even start applying pressure, you have to get the attention of the opponent. Okay, so they got the attention of the opponent. Now, I think with a win on Friday night versus the Florida Panthers, and with the Panthers knowing that they were up 3-0, that they blew one chance at home to close out a series, they blew a second chance on the road, and then they're thinking, we got to go back now when they've won 3 in a row. I think that's when the pressure gets switched over more onto the Florida Panthers plate.
Okay. Yeah. And, you got a scenario in net here where no one saw this coming, maybe on either side. Like, when you consider what's happened with Sergei Bobrovsky throughout the whole season, and now Joseph Woll in net. And Woll was very composed. Defensively, they played incredibly well in front of him, blocked a ton of shots, physical, pushing people out from in front of the net. But he looks good, Craig. Like, he looks good, and it's a compelling story. The idea that their back is up against the wall, their lives are on the line. And here's a guy who was with the Marlies a few weeks ago. What do you of what you know of Joseph Woll, what you've seen, what would you expect out of him tomorrow night?
Okay, so I've watched Joseph Woll play since he was 16 years of age. and the word I would use for him is unflappable. His personality is one of calm and just a sense of poise. That's how he's always played. You know, from the first time I saw him with the national team development program all the way through there. Obviously, he's had some injuries. He's going to turn 25 this year. And you know, we tend to look at that number when you turn 25 as a time when goalies really come into their own. So number one, he's shown a capability. He's had to overcome some injuries, but now he is at that age. And what he showed during the regular season in his games, I think was really positive. But when I see somebody go into the net and just not be busy, not be anxious, that's him. That's his personality. And now he's got the ability and the talent. And I think at this age, too, you also build a confidence in your own abilities. And, you know, that one play that he made when, I forget who was coming off the goal line, and he just put the stick right out there.
Sam Bennett.
That was it Bennett?
Play.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it was just, to me, that play just so, like he wasn't backed into the net. He was reading the play. Boom. I know when to time it. And, you know, Jamie, you know that you got to time that right or you can look pretty awful. And I think he's got that in his game. And, you know, because of the injury to Samsonov, I mean, he's the guy. And, you know, I think the interesting thing is, what if Samsonov was available tomorrow night? What would you do? I know what I would do. I'd go back with Woll.
Yes.
Because it wasn't just what he did; it was what the team did with him in the net. That's why I would have gone. That's why I would go to Woll, even if Samsonov was available.
Yeah. I agree.
I agree too.
It's not an option. It doesn't matter anyway. It's amazing how quickly. It's just like Matt Murray's not even a part of the conversation. Not that he should be, considering Woll got the start and play the way that he did. But, yeah, Samsonov, if it keeps pushing on, that question may come up. We don't have access to info on what's happened with Samsonov. And, you know, they made the announcement pretty quickly. It's not like it's a game-time decision. Clearly, he's banged up. But you got a scenario where Woll gets back at it tomorrow night. The Leafs get back at it tomorrow night. Mitch Marner, what did you make of his play last night? And, you know, the importance of getting him going and him feeling comfortable and him having some sort of an impact, a positive impact on the series moving forward.
We scored the winning goal, and I think I talked about the grind in the offensive zone, but that's also Mitch at his best. You know, moving around the offensive zone, finding the puck, you know, being hard to mark, being hard to check, and you know when you see him in that kind of area doing those types of things, I think that's always positive. Obviously, you know, you're going to count on Mitch Marner to deliver offensively, and he did. I mean, hey, listen, you can never knock the winning goal in a must-win game, but and it's going to, like any other offensive player, you know, when you're scoring, that helps your confidence, that helps you relax a little bit in terms of, you know, being able to. I always say you got to remain in a calm, competitive way, and I think that when you start to not score, you start to put a little bit more pressure on yourself. So the fact that Mitch scored was really positive, but I saw a lot of different plays where Mitch Marner, he didn't hang on to the puck. He said, I don't have a play here. I'm not going to try to make something out of nothing. And I love imagination. I love creativity. But when teams are closing on you and they're closing on you hard and you don't have a lot of space, you got to just say, you know what? I'm not putting our team in harm's way, and I'm not going to try to do anything that could be magical. Because usually, a lot of times, and we saw it earlier in the series, what you try to do in magical goes up in smoke. And you have to recognize come playoff time that what you may be able to do at different points of the regular season, you're not going to be able to do. And I thought that there was really good signs of that from him and from some others.
So out west, you got Oilers, Golden Knights tied at 2. You got Stars, Kraken tied at 2. How do you see this? If we're talking early next week or mid next week, how do you see these series playing out?
Can you phone me tomorrow? Like, I have no idea.
It's wild, isn't it?
You watch one game, you go, wow. You watch the next game, you go, what to that? Okay. Then that's been both series. I mean, both series have had these wild swings, and I don't know. I mean, obviously it's a 2 out of 3 now for both of them. I've been really impressed with Seattle, and you know, with the way that they pressure and they push. And you watch that Vegas Edmonton series. And again, it's like, oh boy, Edmonton's in trouble. Oh no, they're not. Vegas looks like they might be in trouble, and it's a back and forth. Maybe this is just what we should expect, a little bit of unpredictability. Here's what I think, that the team that can get their game into a place where they're not vulnerable, like giving up chances, being on the penalty kill, like the way Vegas played in Game 3. If Vegas can find that game, I think they have a better chance. If Edmonton finds that game like they did in Game 4, I think Game 5 will be telling. I think Game 5 will be telling in both those series with respect to who at that point in time is recognizing their opponent and how you get your game to a better place to close out a series.
Craig, I don't know what you think, and I don't know if there's a reasoning behind it, but William Nylander was pretty good last night. He got on the board. He seemed to have the puck, want the puck. And I don't know if there's something behind him being on a secondary power play unit, but ultimately Ryan O'Reilly's not doing a ton right now. Isn't it time to kind of load him up on that power play and get him back out there and have him and Matthews on the flanks? And if they can't shoot the puck, there's a 2-on-1 in front of the net. I don't know. That might be some kind of tinkering that I would look at going into the next game.
Margins are thin, Jeff. And so what are you trying to do to give yourself a little bit extra on the margins? What are you trying to do to just push it a little bit more into your favor? And so I think there's two parts to that. Like, I like that thinking with William Nylander there. And if it doesn't, you're not vulnerable, but you just come back with Ryan O'Reilly as your centerman coming onto the power play. That's the beauty of Ryan O'Reilly too. He doesn't have to be on the power play, and you can give yourself a little bit of that edge in the margin. And if you don't make good on the power play, then you're able to not be vulnerable coming out of the power play. And
exactly.
And the way Williams been dancing in the offensive zone and making plays, yeah, I think that's a little bit extra on the margins.
Yeah, he looked good again last night. Like he did. He played well. Marner played well. I thought Matthews was sound defensively.
Yeah.
Tavares got lost in the game a little bit, but good on the faceoffs. Physically, he was involved defensively as well, especially down low, battling. That was how the nature of the game last night. It wasn't a wide open game, and we'll see what applies tomorrow. You got a read on Alex Pietrangelo and what should happen. How many games would you hand out if you were running the show in the Department of Safety for the NHL?
Okay, I feel like I'm in the confessional now, so I'm going to confess my sins here. Last night, coming out of the watching the game and everything, and I came out, I was talking about Connor McDavid said it deserves a suspension, and he really spoke, and I said I agree with him, but what I did is I speculated. I said, yeah, I don't think he'll get suspended. Nurse, I think it'll be a wash. Well, that's not my role. And you know what? I did a poor job. What I should have been saying is it merits a 2-game suspension for Pietrangelo, just like Nurse gets a 1-game suspension. So, I didn't say that last night. I went to speculation, although it's playoffs. I was doing all that garbage, and I was wrong in that. But I think it absolutely merits a 2-game suspension. What he did, it's one thing to give a chop. I mean, you're coming over the top there like you're Paul Bunyan trying to chop down the big oak tree. I mean, that was brutal. And, Nurse will get his one, and I think Pietrangelo deserves 2.
Yep.
And I should have said it last night, and I failed.
Well, hey, listen, I wouldn't look at it that way at all, correct? Oh. You're always bringing the heat, regardless of what show you're on. Well, we'll see, buddy. Couple games tonight. Enjoy those. Couple games tomorrow. We'll see how it all plays out up here in Toronto, and we'll do it again soon. Thank you for this.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hey, listen, the bottom line is there's still fun to be had Friday night, Game 5.
That's right. Still alive. Building will be packed. No question about that. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, thanks.
Craig Button, our TSN Hockey Director of Scouting, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Build your next dream Toyota at Maple Toyota, and check out Maple Toyota's pre-owned inventory. Arriving daily, it's time to Toyota. Visit mapletoyota.com. Jays lose heartbreaker yesterday. Romano blows the save, and then Bichette, he didn't even allow Vladdy to stretch out, right? Vladdy has been stretching out.
That was Steve Sachs-ish.
That's a routine double play where you got to get out of the inning. The amazing thing is Vladdy almost got him at home.
He got the one-timer right off the wall.
Off the wall, and he threw a missile.
Yeah.
But like Bichette, that just cannot happen, man. That is a routine play. Yes, a pressure pack play. But that's Bryce Harper. He's not coming out of the box flying, man.
Dude,
Go ask
you
Jonathan
guys know what I'm
Papelbon
like.
about that.
If I was in the organization, that would be the one play where I said, that's enough. You're going to second base. Like, I'm not watching that anymore. I don't care how much you hit, because he hits like
He's hitting like a machine,
Roy Hobbs.
man.
Yeah, he's Roy
been
Hobbs.
Outstanding.
But that stuff, it's just like, why do you want to force yourself for the label of playing shortstop when you're continuously making throws like that? I would just, you got to take control, man. You got to tell him he's going to second base.
Yeah, they're not doing it. Like, they're not going to do it right now.
Okay, then watch that. Then watch that.
Well, exactly. Watch it. That's what's going to happen. Like,
how much sense watching that makes? It doesn't make sense to me at all.
No, that's a really, really poor throw. Like, really awful mistake by him last night. Cost him a game.
Shortstops that are quality make that blindfolded.
Oh, of course. Like, no one's expecting him to be the greatest. He's not going to win a Gold Glove every year. He's not Ozzie Smith.
No,
but the
but
routine plays have to be made. You got to make the routine plays, regardless of the pressure. And it's the 10th inning. I get it. You're on the road, but you got to make that play. You have to. Alex Anthopoulos coming up. Jay's off today. Back home with the Braves in town tomorrow. We'll catch up with Alex next. OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Alex Anthopoulos here in just a moment. We might touch on what happened with the Lakers-Warriors last night, specifically Anthony Davis. Everyone's talking about it.
It is.
We'll get into it.
Outrageous.
Yeah, the fact, like, he's okay and he's playing tomorrow. It
So
changes
why the wheelchair.
Well, that's the whole thing. Like,
There's
no. It's kind of like the analogy I would use is a patron at a golf tournament. When you get hit in the back with a ball, like, the initial reaction is, okay, is everything okay? And then when you find out everything is okay, you react differently, right? And then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, like, why is this guy how is he in a wheelchair if he's fine and he's playing tomorrow night? Like, it doesn't make sense. But if I'm Anthony Davis, I am having the doctor of the team hold a press conference and explain to the world that it was mandatory I sat in that wheelchair.
What I've always wondered,
like,
and we've seen athletes, and we don't need to name names, consistently just walking off the court, walking off the field, skating off the ice. Do they think they were stupid? Like, how they can live with that rep is beyond me.
Yeah.
Beyond me.
Like, and the thing is, like, the Kevon Looney, it was kind of a forearm. Like, Looney didn't even realize he really hit him. Like, if it's
the guy's nickname, Chuck and Shaq call him street clothes all the time, and he gets in a wheelchair?
It was a blowout in fourth quarter.
Those guys were having a tough time on the
They couldn't contain
mound.
themselves last
They couldn't
night.
stop laughing, man.
They couldn't believe it. And he's back tomorrow. Like, again, the reports are it's all good. He's avoided a concussion. He's not concussed.
Which is
So
good. I mean,
he's playing tomorrow night. All right, the Jays are playing tomorrow night.
Yes.
Braves will be in town, and that means we have the opportunity of calling up Alex, or at least bothering Alex to see if he's willing to come on with us. And he's accepted the invitation. Here's the GM and president of baseball operations with the Atlanta Braves, Alex Anthopoulos. How you doing, Alex?
Great. I'm shocked you guys are talking Jays Braves when you got Game 5 tomorrow. Like, I figured no one's even gonna show up to the game.
No, yeah, you know the way the city's big enough. Like, downtown will be rocking tomorrow. There will be people at the Dome. I would assume.
Cool.
You're going to be tracking the
That'll be
Leafs,
cool.
Alex. You know that.
Oh, totally. Hey, I already am. And look, I even I still think it's cool that like our team is there. Game 5, they're going to get to see the energy, the atmosphere. I think a lot of people still don't appreciate or realize how cool it is, what kind of a sports city Toronto is. And there's no greater time than a Leaf, playoff game at home, backs to the wall, all that kind of stuff. And it's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. I'm curious if you can put yourself in the shoes of the GM of the Maple Leafs down 3-1. How exciting is it when your team is down 3-1 in a series? Would you use the term excitement going to the rink or the park in a similar situation?
Yeah. No, because, the only thing I can compare it to is, Toronto-wise, is the NLDS. We're down 0-2 to the Rangers, and you realize, like, man, this could be it tonight. We could be done. And, look, obviously for me it's a little different because I was like, man, I'd made my decision at that point that I wasn't coming back. So it's like, wow, this is it. Like, it all could be over here tonight. So I was pretty excited, obviously coming back. But I will say this, the fact that they won Game 4, the first thing I thought about was the Red Sox, being down 3 games. And it's so easy when you're down that many games. Obviously I'm following stuff, and people are, media and everybody, that's just the way sports is, right? Going to be all over the high-priced players and this and that. And, I mean, I definitely follow. I don't get to watch the way I would want to because we have games too.
Right.
But, the fact that they came back the way they did, the fact that they played the way they did, I think is a really good sign. And it reminds me of Millar with the Red Sox, Kevin Millar, when he said, like, don't let us win tonight. And I do think it's one of those things, like, if you're the Panthers, like, do not let them win again. Because if you do, you talk about momentum. I can tell you in the World Series, when we lost Game 5 and we were going back to Houston for Game 6, I was so nervous because I was like, man, if we lose Game 6, like the pressure is totally on us. We blew the lead. You start feeling it, And look, I've been part of those. We were up 3-1 against LA in 2020, and we blew that lead. So, it's each game is Game 7 for them, but the fact that they won the way they did, look, they're super talented. They're a great team. I don't think anyone would be surprised to see them win this series. And, the fact that they did what they did last game, I'm really optimistic for them tomorrow night.
Yeah, that's a good sign. And I'm curious as the GM in a situation like this, and obviously you have a lot of history, whether you're up in a series, down in a series. Like, I'm always curious where ownership comes into play. Like, if the owner's hanging around or calling you, like, do you have to accept that call all the time? The owner calls you and wants answers on what's happening. Like, what is the interactions like when you're either up 3-1, down 3-1? What's that like as the GM?
I mean, I'd say this, just so general rule of thumb in sports, if you're, I guess, GM, if anybody at ownership level or someone that represents ownership is calling, you're taking that call.
Right.
You could be in the middle of anything. You could be on the phone with someone. Like, you're answering. You're getting off. You're scrambling. On the rare time you miss that call, fine. But you're definitely being accountable. Now, I think it all depends. I think, look, when I was in Toronto, it was great there because ownership wasn't like that. They let you do your job. They really did. They didn't interfere. They didn't get involved. You traded who you wanted to trade. You signed who you wanted to sign. You had a certain amount of money to work with. But other than that, as long as it fit from a financial standpoint, they were not involved at all in a great way. So, I have no idea with the way the Leafs are run with obviously Bell and so on, just the MLSE, the empire there. But I think when you're in the middle of it, everyone knows what you have at stake. Everyone knows how important it is, each game is and so on. And you're taking each game, you're trying to win that day. So I don't think any of that is going to change. But, I like their chances to win tomorrow. And, if they do, which I like their chances to, I think all of a sudden momentum changes because then all of a sudden, you're right there. And if you're Florida, things change real fast.
So you're telling me in Toronto you never traded for a guy and you didn't get a phone call saying, why'd you make that trade? That guy stinks.
You know what? I remember one time. So the off season we got. I didn't get it. That guy stinks. They probably believe that, but they know. And you don't get it during the season. At the time, we had. It was the 2014 off season, going to 2015. So we were active. We traded for Estrada. We traded for Donaldson. We signed Martin, and we did those moves. Right. I reported to Paul Beeston, but again. Rogers was not involved in a good way. That's not a shot. It's fantastic. You want it set up that way. They support you. They give you financial resources. They do not get involved on the baseball side. You do what you want to do. But it was in the off season, and we had made. I think we'd done Donaldson before Martin, and there was a comment made to me like, really like the Donaldson move, not sure about Martin, but look, like we had made the decision, right? And that was that was in the off season, so. People are allowed to have their opinion and so on. And, for us, it was about changing the mix and the group. And, Martin was our number one target. I can tell you, if you guys remember at the time, Melky Cabrera was coming off an all-star season. He was great. There was a lot of, fanfare around bringing him back and so on. And there was even some discussion that some people felt like, hey, he should be the guy to bring back. And I remember going to Paul internally and telling him, look, Martin is the guy I want. He's my first choice. He's the guy I want in free agency. And I know he's not necessarily going to move the needle in sales and things like that, but he's the guy. He's the right fit. He's everything that we need. And he was fully supportive. You know, I went out and I got a suite at the Bell Center. I met him at the Canadiens game. I met him for an hour before the game, and then I handed over the suite to him and his friends. But I wanted to be the first guy out of the gate, and I basically told him, like, you will be a Toronto Blue Jay, like, before we even talk money. And, you know, there's no scenario that you're not signing with us. And if we can't sign you being a team in Canada, something's wrong. And obviously we gave him a great deal, but I do think he was critically important for us.
What kind of bill did he and his buddies rack up at the Bell Center that night?
I mean, we gave him, I think, $82 million, right? So whatever it was well worth the money.
Right.
But, you know, I remember I was driving back and forth from Toronto, Montreal a bunch at that time. But it was pretty much, you know, the minute we were able to talk to him, I called his agent and said, I want to be the first guy out of the gate. You know, the minute you're allowed to talk, I want to be the first team to meet with him. I want to be right there. And I think it's important. You know, you realize, look, the contract at the end of the day is going to be the most important thing. But, you know, it's one of those things that you know, I think it's important to show these guys love and show them that you love them. And damn, I remember on one of my conference calls with him after the fact, I think I played the Canadian anthem at one point, and I was trying to get him to finally say yes. So it was definitely a full court press. We were excited to get him.
Alex, the Braves are playing well again, and I know years ago you mentioned that you were breaking down the importance of analytics and leadership and intangibles, and you learned a lot, and you've obviously gone on to win a World Series. Do you have, like, one kind of formula, or are you always trying to continue to evolve and look at different things and different approaches can also work?
You know, it's funny. I had a moment in spring training where, you know, sometimes it's easy to get caught up. I've been doing this since 2000, not as a GM, but just working in baseball. I'm 45 now, so I'm still young, but I've been doing it a while, and this is year 12 for me as a GM. And it's easy to just kind of, it's a little bit of Groundhog Day with off season and long spring training and all that. But, you know, there's a moment in spring training, you finally get back around the players and the coaches and so on, and you're talking baseball all the time. And, you know, I was talking to some of our players and, you know, just having a bunch of baseball conversation, and they brought up some stuff that I never considered. And then I went to talk to our coaches about it. And, you know, that was exciting. I was like, man, that's so interesting. That makes a ton of sense. And, you know, I sat there and I'm like, you know what, this is really one of the aspects I love about this. Like, as long as I've been in baseball, over 20 years, I'm still learning tons of stuff. Mm-hmm. And even I was on a spring training trip and we're sitting around just before the game. These are small spring training clubhouses. And I'm talking to some of the, you know, I hate to call them 4A guys, but they're 4A guys. They've been up and down and gotten some experience. But even talking to them and some of the things that they were saying, and, you know, I think now, look, you're always looking at data and information, and we have really bright people that work with us, and I'm learning from them all the time. But I find I'm learning more and more, continuing to talk to players and build relationships and trying to get that side of it, because it's a side I didn't have, right? I didn't have a playing career. I didn't coach. I wasn't on the field, and I still have a ton to learn there. And I think there's a competitive advantage to that, right? A lot of us at the GM level now in our sport, NHL a little different, but in our sport, it's not that many guys that played. It's a lot of guys probably with, you know, similar background that, you know, didn't have a playing career and have had to learn. So, you know, scouting has certainly helped me. That's where I started. But I do think talking to players and learning from them more, I find I'm doing that more now in these last few years of my career has been huge.
We're chatting with Alex Anthopoulos. The Braves are in town tomorrow night. Mike Soroka is one of our favorites. He grew up idolizing Noodles as a big Flames fan out in Calgary.
We all did.
Absolutely,
very
Noodles.
Traumatic.
Very no, that's a fact. He's a huge Flames fan. He loved you and Kipper back in the day. I think he's starting in AAA tonight, I believe, is what I read. How's he looking? How's it coming? I mean, we're all pulling for this guy. He's had so many tough, you know, breakdowns with the Achilles, but how's Soroka looking, and what's the plan moving forward?
Yeah, so I will say this. It's a legitimate Flames love because he's had a jersey. Like, he's walked into the clubhouse before with a Flames jersey, so it's real. That's not eyewash or anything like that at all. He's doing well, and I know there was a lot of talk about him making a start, and you know, I think the thing with him is he's doing well. He's getting better. He's not where he needs to be yet. His velocity is good. His stuff is good. It's just he hasn't pitched in 2 years. And his performance is good, not great. He has the ability to be great, as we all know. And I think for us, we don't want to yo-yo him. We don't want to bring him up, send him back down. We'd like to feel like when he comes up, he's here and he's here to stay. And we'd like for him to reel off a bunch of outings that he's really dominant and throwing the ball well and his command's there and so on. So we're trying to really, in all honesty, we're trying to buy as much time. Well, if there's times you don't have a choice and you're going to need somebody, he's on the roster and so on. He's stretched out to start. But we're trying to use the analogy of if you bake, we're trying to basically let him cook and not be undercooked when he comes up here. So every time we get him a start down there, I think is certainly a really good thing for him. And he's going to factor for us. He's going to get called up at some point, I would expect. And hopefully he can be a huge piece going forward.
Well, you guys are rolling. Go ahead, Noodles.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that. Just when you're actually, what you've just told us about Mike, do you have to talk to his agent about that? Do you actually talk to the player and say, this is what we'd like, this is what we envision for you? Like, is there line of communication, between your level and a player at his level where he is right now? Is it something that's important to you, or you just articulate it to the agent who passes it on to the player? Like, how is that how is that communication line delivered to him?
You know what? So with that, so in spring training we optioned him, right? So
right.
That was the main communication. It was like, look, you're going down. At that point, we said, look, you haven't pitched in a long time. We don't know how many innings we're going to feel good with you throwing. We're hoping to be playing into October. We want to make sure that you're good for that period. So we actually talked about starting him at 3 innings, and maybe if there was a scenario that he might pitch 3 innings out of the bullpen at some point just to get experience there if we have a need. But we just talked about slowly building him up. And as we were building him beyond 3 innings, that's where the manager down there will relay things and say, look, Mike, we're going to bump you up to 5 and 80, for example, tonight. We'll let you throw 80, 5 innings, and so on. And they'll communicate there. If there's anything beyond that that's a concern or whatnot, I believe I have a good enough relationship with him that he could talk to me directly. He might shoot me a text, might give me a call. It could be his agent as well. I have a great relationship with his agent. So I think everyone talks about communication. It's true. I think transparency, communication is really important. I think every player, look, at every employee, even at any job, you want to know where you stand, right? And I think right now he knows. I haven't spoken to him about it, but he knows what's going on, and he sees, and he knows. He'd probably be the first one to tell you, I'm not where I need to be yet. I'm getting there, but I'm not where I need to be yet. And he has very high expectations of himself as well. So he knows what's going on. If he was putting up a 1 ERA and striking out everybody and dealing, and we weren't calling him up, yeah, he'd probably ask, like, what do I have left to do? But he hasn't been. He's been good, not great. So I think knowing him, he knows he's got to continue to get better, and that opportunity will come.
Well, it's going to be fun to have the Braves in town, flashbacks of 30 years ago. And obviously you guys are off to an incredible start, kind of running away with the NL East, although I guess we saw that last year, roles being a little bit reversed. Continued success as always, Alex. We always appreciate the honesty and the time, and we'll do it again down the road. Thank you for this.
All right, guys. Always glad to be on. See ya.
You got it. Alex Anthopoulos, GM, President of Baseball Ops, the Atlanta Braves. Maybe that wasn't necessary to say, hey, you're lapping the field. And remember the Mets did that last year, and the Braves blew past them. But they
Mets
are
like taking some.
The Mets are in a bad place. They are in a
Mets
bad
Twitter,
place.
dude. Don't go there. Don't even. If you're a Mets fan, Mets Twitter can get nasty.
It's nasty. It's nasty. Well, you look what happened to them last year, right? Like, and you look at the Braves. Like I looked it up earlier today. Braves have a plus 59 run differential. Every other team in the NL East is negative. Like the second place Marlins, they're 500. They're 19-19. They're minus 54 run differential. But the Mets are 18-20. Phillies just took 2 off the Jays. They're 18-19. Like the Braves are the cream of the crop, and they have been for years. Like just
and
consistently
that guy we just
great.
had on the phone, he's a nice guy, and I'm not just saying this because he takes time for us, but if you can't like that guy, he's smart, he's engaging, he's honest. Like I don't know what there's not to like about that cat.
Yeah. And he's also all business, right? Like I'm sure he handles business very well, very cordially, very professionally, but he's also in it to win it.
That's right.
That's why he's in the position he's in, and the Braves they're lucky to have him. They're in a good place. All right, Dreg's coming up. Luke Wilson coming up. Get some Ryan Reynolds news out of Ottawa. We'll tell you about that next. Well, the dream is over, apparently. According to Emily Kaplan of ESPN, Bruce Garriock of Sun Media and TSN also confirming reports that Ryan Reynolds and the Remington Group, they're out. They're done. No longer bidding on Ottawa. So there
But
it
if
goes.
you ultimately get the Senators, and I have no idea where the people are from or what their motives are, if you ultimately get them, don't you want to call them and say, you want to jump on board? I know you weren't in our group, but he can do so much for the organization as far as the marketing. And Bruce Garriock has talked about all the different elements that he can bring. Don't you want to sniff that out or no?
I guess, yeah. But my understanding is it was Reynolds who turned down that idea.
Yeah, he just saddled up with the Remington Group.
Yeah, connect with one. This is it. It sounds like it was a power play by them. They tried to get an exclusive negotiating window. The Sens said no, and they basically said, all right, we're out of here. So, I don't know. Does it change between now and the end of the week or next week? Maybe they get back in, but I doubt it.
It's a land play. We'll get into it in the 6 o'clock.
Yeah, we'll see what Dregs can tell us. But that's disappointing. It seemed like everyone in Ottawa, they wanted Reynolds, right? They all wanted Reynolds. And now, Snoop's coming in. The weekend's a part of it. And who knows who's going to end up actually owning the Ottawa Senators. But they're going to make a lot of money. Final hour coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050, soon to be up on TSN 2.